Hello everyone, this is Piyush. Welcome back to my channel. In this video, let's look at how to file your Indiana state taxes in the year 2025. So without wasting any time, let's get into it. Hi everyone, if you don't know me, I was a student at Purdue University. I graduated 1 year back and currently working full-time based in New York. This video is specifically for people who have to file Indiana state taxes for the financial year 2024. Just to make you aware about the tax system here, the financial year is calculated from the 1st January to 31st December compared to the financial year for India, which is different, which is from I think 1st April to 31st March. So the tax cycle is different based on various countries, but this video is specifically for taxes in US and more specifically about Indiana state taxes. So as an international student, you need to file two types of taxes. One is the federal tax, which you can consider as the central government in USA, and the second is each state has their own taxes. So I think 6 or 7 states in the US don't have any state taxes, but Indiana is not one of them. So if you worked in Indiana, if you stayed in Indiana, worked part-time, internships or full-time, you need to file the Indiana state taxes. An important point to remember is that this video would be specifically helpful for people who have simple types of income such as W-2 income, which is income from your employment, whether it's part-time, full-time or your internships, if you had interest income or dividend income. But if your tax situation is more complicated than this, you had multiple sources of income apart from this, then I would highly recommend you to consult your university or consult a tax professional or a paid agent to make sure you don't miss out filling any information or filling out any form. I feel so grateful for all of you for sharing all my tax filing videos. I have been blessed with so many positive comments and people reaching out to me to put the tax filing videos in this year as well. So I'm back again for tax filing, whether it's federal taxes or state taxes. It was like a cherry on top when Purdue University themselves featured my YouTube video on their dedicated tax filing website. So I feel so privileged, and this is because of you all. You all have supported me a lot and giving positive feedbacks, positive comments, and reaching out to me personally, whether it's WhatsApp, YouTube comments, or even email. Thank you so much for that, and keep supporting so that I stay motivated to get all these videos for you. Now coming back to the topic, so Indiana state tax filing has a lot of forms, whether it's IT-40 PNR, Schedule A, Schedule D, Schedule C, Schedule IN-DEP, Schedule F and so on. But wait, don't get overwhelmed by that. It's pretty simple if you know like what forms to fill. And I am here to help you all to file your Indiana state taxes for free. Now I will start sharing my screen and let's dive straight into it. First step is to start downloading all the required forms for Indiana state tax. You can start by searching it on Google. As an international student, you are a non-resident for tax purposes in Indiana, so you don't need this portion. You directly scroll to Indiana part year residents and full year non-residents. So this is the forms that we would need, and start by downloading the form IT-40 PNR, Schedule A, Schedule C, Schedule D, Schedule IN-DEP, Schedule F and Schedule IN-DONATE, Schedule H and Schedule INW, and the last one is CT-40 PNR. So make sure you download all these forms on your desktop. Let's start with the first form. The main form for Indiana state tax filing is form IT-40 PNR, where NR stands for non-resident. So the first thing to note is that make sure this is for the year 2024, and then start by filling out your social security number here, your first name, initial as well as last name, and if you had any spouse then make sure you fill this, otherwise you can leave this blank. Enter the present address right here, and it's important to note that if you are currently staying in say New York, so you will enter the New York address. It doesn't necessarily need to be the Indian address, but it should be the current address where you are staying in. The next is county where you lived and where you worked. So you have to enter the 2-digit county code where you lived and worked as of Jan 1st, 2024. So say you had any lease in Indiana as of Jan 1st, you will enter the respective code here. If you are a Purdue student, the code for Tippecanoe County is 79, so you can enter that. If you are a resident of some other state, then you will enter 00. For county where you worked, if you were an employee as of 1st Jan, it's not necessarily important that you worked on 1st Jan, but if you're employed by this date, suppose you worked on 31st or 30th December of the last year, you should enter the applicable county code. That's it for the form IT40 PNR for now. We would be coming back later to add all these values, but we have to fill out the other schedules before we continue putting the values here. So let's move to the next form, which is Schedule A. So this schedule is basically to report all your income or losses during the financial year. And let's start with putting our name as per IT40 PNR, the same name that you entered in that form. Enter your social security number. Then there are two columns here. Column A stands for income from federal return and column B is only the income that is taxed by Indiana. So let's say, for example, you worked as an intern in New York for half of the year and other half of the year you worked in Indiana. So I assume that I earned $10,000 in the entire year, but only 5,000 was from Indiana. So I will enter the respective amounts right here in the wages. Make sure you see all the lines, but none of them were applicable for me, so I just left it blank. If you had any income which is interest income or dividend income, remember that we are taxed at a flat rate of 30%, so that income is not included in the state taxes, which is why I have left this blank. So you just fill this like if anything applies to you, and then directly move to the line 21, which says just add lines 1 through 20. So it will be 10,000 for me here and it will be 5,000 for me here. Then let's move to the second page of this form. You can leave this section blank, it is for non-resident military personnel. So this is 21D, where you have to just divide the amount on line 21B by amount on line 21A, which is dividing 5,000 by 10,000. So put that amount here. Remember that we have a decimal here, so you just put it in decimals and round it off to 3 digits. So it is 0.500 for me, so I just wrote it as 0.5. Section 2 is adjustments to income, and this is mostly applicable only to the citizens, because you see it says that enter the amounts from form 1040, 1040 SR or schedule 1. So if it's not applicable for you, you can just leave this section as blank. And moving to the section 3, which is total, so you just have to subtract line 35 from line 31. So if you didn't have anything here, it will be the same as per line 21, which was 10,000 and 5,000 for me. So I entered 10,000 and 5,000. Now an important thing is, like, you will need to note down some of the values to be put in the main form. So I would suggest to take out a diary, take out a page, or take out your notes app from your mobile and just enter the values that I am telling. So for schedule A, write schedule A total and enter the value as 5,000, which is on line 36B. So that's it for this form, that is schedule A. Now let's move to our next form. The next form is the schedule C, which is for deductions. So again, we will start by writing the name same as per form IT40 PNR, then enter your social security number. The first box says enter your Indiana address where you rented an apartment. So a thing to note here is that if you stayed on campus or if you stayed with some NGO housing, you can't claim the renter's deduction. But if you had any lease with any agency or management companies, then you can enter the address and claim the deductions. You just enter your Indiana address where you had the lease and enter the landlord's name and address. Now you might think that what if I had 2 leases during the year? So if that's the case, make sure you enter the most recent one. For example, you stayed the first 6 months in apartment 1 and next 6 months in a different apartment 2. So make sure you enter the details for apartment 2. In the number of months rented, even if you stayed in Indiana for 12 months, only enter the number of months that you stayed in your most recent lease. It might be 12 months or it might be less. But in the amount of rent paid, make sure you add the combined rent. For example, I stayed in apartment 1 where I paid say $2,500 and I stayed in apartment 2 for which I paid $2,500. So that adds up to be $5,000. So enter the combined rent. Address and landlord's name is only the recent lease, but the amount of rent paid should be total of all the leases, all the rents you paid in Indiana. Then it says enter the lesser of 3,000 or the amount of rent paid. So my amount is more than 3,000, which is why I'm entering 3,000. 3,000 is the maximum amount you can claim as a deduction. So if you had less than 3,000, let's say you had $1,000, you can't put 3,000, you have to put 1,000. But for me, it's more than 3,000, which is why I put the maximum deduction that we can claim, which is 3,000. Second line is for residential property tax deduction. If you were a homeowner, if you don't own a home, you can obviously leave this section blank. You can read all these lines to see if it's applicable to you, but none of them were applicable to me, so I just left them blank and moved to the line 12, which is just adding lines 1 through 11. So I had nothing in here, so it should be the same as line 1, which is 3000 in my case. So I enter the value as 3000, and again take out your notes, write schedule C total and enter the value in the box 12. Now let's move to our next form. So the next form is schedule D, which is for exemptions. Again, the same step, we start by writing our name similar to the form IT for TPNR and enter our social security number. First line says enter 2000 if you are married filing jointly, otherwise enter 1000. So if you are just single, you can just enter it as 1000. Second is enter the number of dependents. If you had any dependents, you have to enter the number here and also enclose the schedule IN-DEP. But again, if you are single, you don't have any dependents, you can leave this section blank, and you also don't need to include the schedule IN-DEP in your state tax filing. If you had any additional dependents, you can write here. If you were 65 or older or your spouse was 65 or older, you can enter the value here, otherwise just leave this section blank. Read the lines carefully, but for most of us it shouldn't be applicable. So if it's not applicable, directly move to the line 7, which just says add all the lines from 1 through 6. So I had nothing in these boxes, so the total for me was just 1000. Line 8 is just entering the number from schedule A. So if you remember, we divided the income from Indiana by the income from federal. For me it came out to be 0.5, so I will enter that value right here. Again, this box has a decimal, so make sure you enter the value correctly. Last is just multiplying line 7 by line 8, so which is, in my case, it's 1000 into 0.5, which turns out to be $500 for me. Again, take out your notes, write schedule D total and enter the value that you got on the box 9. That's it for schedule D. Now let's move to our next form. So our next form is schedule F slash schedule IN donate, which is for credits. So again, the same steps, start by writing your name as per form IT for TPNR, enter your social security number. The first box says Indiana state tax withheld. So here you have to take out your W2, see how much state tax was withheld from your pay for Indiana and enter the value right here. Make sure you round it off, like round off all the numbers in all the forms. So if it's 0.5 or less, you will round it down, and if it's 0.5 or more, then you will round it up. So make sure all the values are entered as rounded amounts. The second line is Indiana county tax withheld. So again, in your W2 you will see local tax withheld, so enter that amount right here. You can continue reading all the lines, but in most of the cases it shouldn't be applicable, but it's a good idea to just read through it to see if anything's applicable. If not, you can directly move to the line 13, which is just the addition of lines 1 through 12. For me it is like 500 plus 100, which turns out to be $600, so I will enter the amount right here. Again, take out your notes, write schedule F total and enter the value that you get on the box 13. The schedule and donate is only required if you made any donations. So if you had any donations, you can claim some credit. So make sure you enter that if you donated in the last financial year. If not, you can just leave this section blank. That's it for this form. Now let's move to our next form. The next form is schedule H, which shows the residence information. Again, I'm telling it again and again, but it's important to enter the name as per IT for TPNR, then enter your social security number. Now it says residency information, so you have to enter all the states or all the countries you were a resident of in that financial year 2024. So let's say you were only a resident of Indiana and you stayed in Indiana from 1st Jan to 31st December. So you just enter state of residence in 2 letters code. For Indiana it is IN, for Illinois it is IL, and so on. You just write the date, say 1 January 2024 to 31st December 2024. And this section asks, did you file a tax return with the state? So yes, we are filing the tax return, so you will select yes. If you had multiple states, make sure you enter the correct dates. For example, let's say you stayed in Indiana for the first 6 months, you will enter 1st Jan to 30th June, and the remaining months, you suppose you stayed in California, so you will enter CA the respective dates, and again if you are filing the tax return, click on yes. Let's say if you went to India for 2 or 3 months, the code that you have to use is OC, which stands for foreign country. This section is only applicable if you had a spouse, so if it's not applicable, you can leave this section blank. In the second page, so first question is, are you filing a federal tax return for 2024? So yes, we are filing the federal tax return, so we'll click yes. This is for extensions. So if you are claiming an extension for either federal taxes or Indiana state taxes, click here, otherwise leave this section blank. This is for farm or fishing income, which should not be applicable to us, and date of death again not applicable to us. This line 6 says enter the number of days you worked in Indiana during the calendar year, that is 2024. So enter the exact number of days that you worked in Indiana. It might be 100 days, 30 days, 365 days, and so on. Just make sure you enter as accurately as possible. Then the line 7 asks for your daytime telephone number, which is your cell phone number, so you can enter it right here, and your email address, the best email address to reach out to you. This section is only applicable if you had a paid preparer or some representative for tax filing, but if you are filing it by yourself, you can leave this section blank. That's it for the Schedule H. Now let's move to our next form. So the next form in our tax filing is Schedule IN-W, which is for withholding amounts from your income. So again, start with writing your name as per form IT40 PNR, enter your social security number, and we have various columns right here. So start by entering your social security number, the form that you had. All the income forms that you had would be in separate lines. So let's say you had W2, so you will enter the form code as W. If you see the boxes right here, they have the form code for each of the types of forms. So if you had W2, the form code is W. If you had 1099R, it's R, and so on. Then you enter the employer payer ID number, which you can find it from your W2. In the column D, you write state income. Again, you can find it from your W2. So see how much is the state income for you. Column E is the state tax withheld, which you can again see it from your W2. The column F is local income, which is applicable for your county. Again, you can get it from your W2. Column G and H, again, like basically all the values from these columns, you can find everything in your W2 or the income form that is applicable for you. So make sure you enter these values correctly. This is the local tax withheld and this is the locality code. So if you had only one W2, just fill line 1. If you had multiple W2s, you can fill out all the applicable lines for you. To the line 26, where for the column E, you have to add everything here. So I only had one, that's why I just put this value 500. But if you had multiple, make sure you add everything and put it in this box. The last line is adding lines 1 through 25 for column G. So again, I had nothing here, so it would be the same as this for me. But if you had multiple, make sure you add it correctly and enter the amount right here. So that's it for the schedule IN-W. Now let's move to our main form, that is form IT40 PNR. So if you remember, we filled out the number still here. We have to start from the line 1. So here it says enter the amount from section 3 line 36B. So you can take out your notes and where you wrote schedule A total, enter that value right here. For me it was 5000, so I will write 5000. You can leave the second line blank because we didn't have any schedule B. The line 3 is simply the addition of lines 1 and 2, so it should be 5000 in my case. Fourth line says enter amount from schedule C. So again, take out your notes, check schedule C total and enter the value right here. For me it was 3000. The line 5 says subtract line 4 from line 3, which is subtracting 3000 from 5000, which gives us 2000 in my case. Make sure you do your calculations correctly. Line 6 is enclosing the value from schedule D. So again, take out your notes, go to schedule D total and enter the amount right here. It was 500 for me, so I will enter it here. The seventh line says subtract line 6 from line 5, which is subtracting 500 from 2000, which brings me to 1500. So basically this thing is the Indiana adjusted gross income. This is the income on which you would be taxed. It might be less than 0 for you. If it's less than 0 for you, that basically means that you are not liable to pay any Indiana state taxes. The 8th line says just multiply the line 7 by 0.0305. Again, as I mentioned, you have to round up or round down the value, so make sure you only put it in rounded numbers. For the line 9, this is for the county tax, so you don't directly get the value, you have to fill out another schedule, which is schedule CT40 PNR. So before proceeding with this form, again let's move to this form to make sure we get this value correctly. This is our schedule CT40 PNR, which is for county taxes. You only have to fill this form if your Indiana taxable income, which you got in form IT40 PNR, is more than $0. So if it was 0 or less, you don't have to fill out this form, you can ignore this section. But if you had some taxable income for Indiana, you have to fill out this form. Again, start by putting your name as for form IT40 PNR, enter your social security number. First section, it says to be completed by taxpayers who were residents of an Indiana county. If you are not a resident of Indiana, you are not liable to pay the county taxes, so you can again ignore it. But if you were a resident of Indiana, you had an active lease in Indiana as of Jan 1st, you have to fill out this form. So the first line says enter the amount from IT40 PNR line 7, which is the Indiana taxable income. For me it was 1500, so I will enter that amount right here. This column is only for spouse, so if it's not applicable for you, you can leave this blank. Second is enter the county tax rate from the chart on the back of this schedule. So if you go to this schedule, you can see all the counties in Indiana. So for me, it's Tippecanoe County for Purdue. So I will see 79 and see the applicable county tax rate right here. Make sure you check your county and only write the values accordingly. So for me, it's 0.0128. So I will enter it right here. So if you see, the line already has a decimal, so only put the values that are in front of the decimal. And then the third line simply says multiply line 1 by line 2, which is multiplying this by this, which gives me $19. Next is just addition of 3 and 3B, so I didn't have anything in 3B, which is why I just carry this amount in box 4. This is only applicable for some Kentucky localities, so you can leave this blank if it doesn't apply. And this is for Perry County, so you can again leave this blank if it doesn't apply to you. The seventh line is just enter the total of line 4 minus line 6. So we don't have anything in line 6, so again the value should be as it is from the box 4, which is $19 in my case. You have to enter this value from box 7 in our IT40 PNR line 9. So let's go back to that form. So this is how I got the $19 amount. I got it from the schedule CT40 PNR. If you didn't have any taxable income, it should be the state tax as well as county tax should be 0 for you. But I had some taxable income, which is why I got these values. Then the line 10 is for other taxes if it's applicable to you, or else you can just move to the line 11, which is just adding the lines 8, 9 and 10. So for me it is $65, so I will enter that amount right here. Moving to the second page of this form. Now here enter the credits from schedule F. So again take out your notes, find schedule F total and enter the value right here. This is for schedule G, so we don't have that, so you can leave this section blank. And this is just addition of lines 12 and 13, which is 600 in my case. Enter the value here from line 11, which is in the first page. Then it says if line 14 is equal to or more than line 15, subtract line 15 from line 14. So my line 14 is more than line 15, which is why I have to submit 65 from 600, which gives me $535. Enter the donations from schedule I and donate if you made any donations during the last year, otherwise you can leave this blank. And the line 18 is simply subtracting line 17 from line 16, which is the same value because I didn't have any donations. This is only applicable if you want this overpayment to be reflected in the next year tax returns, but we want all the refund that we have, so you can just leave this section blank. Again, the penalty is not applicable to me, so I will leave that section blank. 21 is refund, so which is line 18 minus all the lines 19D and 20, but we didn't have anything here, so the refund should be the same as the box 18. Then you have to just select the direct deposit option and put your routing number as well as account number. Make sure you do it correctly because this is where you will get the refund. If you provide the wrong information or make some mistakes, then your refund might be gone. So make sure you do it correctly and then select the type of account. If it's outside the US, you select this box, otherwise you can just skip it. This is only applicable if line 15 was more than line 14, but As we saw, for me, line 14 was more than line 15, which is why I just entered the values here, and this section isn't applicable for me. Line 24 is penalty filed after due date and interest if filed after due date. So if you're before the deadline, then don't worry, you just leave these lines blank. An amount you owe. So you already have a refund, you don't owe anything, then you leave this section blank. If you fill out line 23, then you have to make sure you fill out the line 26 to see how much you owe to the Indiana government. So as you saw, it's not too difficult, to be honest. Once you know which forms to fill out, it's pretty easy. You just have to put some numbers, do some basic mathematics, addition and subtraction, and that should be it. Now, after you have filled out all your forms, make sure first thing to double check all your numbers so that you don't make any calculation error, because then you will have to file an amended return which costs you money as well as time. So you don't want to get into that. If you want, you can sit with a friend and make sure the calculations are correct, because sometimes you are so into it that we forget to see outside the box or see from a different perspective. So have a friend, sit together, and that's how you can double check your calculations. Your responsibility is not over after just filling out these forms. It's your duty to print out all these forms, sign and date wherever required, and send it to the correct address before the deadline. The deadline for tax filing is 15th April 2025, so make sure your tax forms are sent to the Indiana government before this date. There is a high chance that as a student in Indiana, you will most probably get a refund. But if you have to make a payment to the government, which is still a possibility, there are two different addresses for the government. One is if you are receiving a refund, you have to send the documents to a separate address, and if you have to make any payment, if you owe to the government, you have a separate address. So just take your time, be calm, and don't rush into it. Make sure the tax forms are correct, you include all the forms, the calculations are correct, you sign and date wherever required, and send it to the correct address. Share this video with all your friends in Indiana to make sure that they are aware about the tax filing in Indiana and they don't mess it up anywhere. Comment down if you have any questions for me, and I will be more than happy to help you all. Like and subscribe my channel if you find my content useful. Thank you again for watching this video. Until next time.